It is very, very hard to do Michelin level restaurants. There is a certain level of pressure that if one person in the dining room drops a piece of silverware on the way to the Michelin table, you could lose the star. There is some maddening nature to all this.
Kevin Boehm has opened 50 restaurants, holds a 15-year Michelin star, and co-founded Boka Restaurant Group.
I always think that the restaurateur-chef relationship is a lot like the producer-musician relationship. You put Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney in a room together. Rick Rubin isn't going to tell Paul how to write a song.
That's right.
But he might have a great idea that Paul can execute. Rubin is an ideator, and then Paul's got to make it real.
How do you evaluate whether a chef has like the discipline and management ability to be a partner and not just a good cook?
The first conversation always is just a kind of lengthy conversation to say, do we think you're smart and do we like you? And do you like us? If we pass that test, then we just bring him in and we're like, hey, why don't you cook your greatest hits for us? But if you're putting an album together that had 10 cuts on it, what are the 10 songs that you would put on it?
What would you tell the version of yourself who was opening Lazy Days at 23 based on what you've learned?
The first thing I would tell myself is
Kevin Boehm, welcome to the show. We are honored to have you.
Oh, I'm honored to be here.
You are a legend in this space, and really someone who, we have, in terms of our guests, we have all everything from single restaurant operators all the way up through people who work at the massive enterprise restaurant brands and vendors all in between. But you are someone who really exemplifies what it means to be a restaurateur who starts a platform and just like expands that. It's really impressive to see what you've done in this industry, and we'll get into a lot of how all that works, because I think some of our listeners would be really interested in that. But I want to take us kind of all the way back a little ways.
All the way back? Like Flint, Michigan in 1970 back? Or
we'll go like 2/3 of the way back.
Okay.
When you got your start in starting restaurants, you'd saved up money as a server and a bartender to open a 6-table restaurant called Lazy Days, which is a great name, in Seaside, Florida in 1993. You were 23 years old.
I was.
It sounds so young to me. You also written that what you've described as an embellished resume to land a captain position at a restaurant when you never actually had done that job as well. These early years of like figuring it out in real time, because I'm going to go ahead and imagine you were just trying to fake it till you made it kind of thing. What did those early years of doing that teach you about restaurant operations that you couldn't have learned any other way?
Well, first of all, let me just say, embellished is kind. It was just, they were outright lies.
Yeah.
It was just
I had it in air quotes.
Yeah. It was filled with restaurants I never really worked at. But I was a student starting at the beginning, and I knew what I didn't know. And when you're faking it, the one thing that you're really fearful of is being discovered as a fraud. And so that fear leads you to learning as fast as you possibly can. And fortunately, there were some real professionals that I worked with in those early days in Florida that I started to build this kind of Frankenstein of who I was as a restaurant person. I'm going to steal from this person and this person and this person. And Miles Davis has that great quote, it took me years to learn to play like myself.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I was this composite of 20 different people. As I tried to figure out who I was in the space. And sometimes you just have to jump off a cliff, Andy. And I just very early on wanted to be my own boss. And when I opened up that first restaurant at 23, my girlfriend and I just kind of jumped off a cliff and said, okay, let's see if we got this or not. And fortunately, it was small enough that and rural enough that we were able to make a lot of our mistakes hidden in the shade of Seaside, Florida in the early 90s when it was very sleepy.
How did you decide? I mean, 23 years old, you're just like, I'm gonna open a restaurant, right? You had obviously worked in restaurants, but like, how did you come to that place where you're like, no, I'm going to start my own? Was it just the whole, I want to be my own boss type of thing? Or was it, you had a good idea? What really drove that?
I think it was a combination of naivete and arrogance and desperation. I'd had some trauma in my early life. And I felt like I had nothing to lose at that point. I had dropped out of college and driven to Florida and lived in my Jeep for a little while. And I was like, what's the worst that could happen? People, throw the word courage around too much. There was nothing courageous about that. I just thought, if this doesn't work, I'll just go back to college and I'll do what all my other friends are doing. And so we jumped in head first. And fortunately, my emotional IQ was higher than my restaurant IQ at the time, and people rooted for us. It was myself and my girlfriend at the time in this little tiny restaurant, and people thought it was charming.
Yeah.
And so it was like, having dinner at Lazy Days was like having dinner at a little cafe in Mayberry. It was like Teresa's little daughter, hanging out in the kitchen and me and her. And there was this like small town charm about it. And we tried really hard. And I think people kind of felt that.
Oh, okay. I like it. People love authenticity, and we're gonna dive into how that informed a lot of what you did. But just to bring it now to give people a frame of reference, if you're not familiar with Kevin, is that you then fast forward, we call it almost 10 years, right? You and Rob Katz founded Boka in 2002, right?
Correct.
Which was just, and then you made a decision that has defined the entire company that you would build around chefs. And you've worked with some names that have gone on to become amazing names. Giuseppe Tintori, Stephanie Izard, Christina Tosi. Just the list goes on and on and on. And each partnership produced a restaurant that was conceptually unique to a certain extent. What does the actual structure of a Boka Chef partnership look like? Like, how did you divide like equity, creative control, operational responsibility? Walk us through the mechanics of how that works, because I'm sure it's a dance.
First of all, we built this architecture in the early days of Boka, and we kind of screwed it up in the beginning. We opened up 3 restaurants that were very similar to each other and didn't have a lot of definition. And then we went back to the whiteboard and redrew it and said, hey, let's do very specific concepts and let's find the perfect chef partner for each concept. Let's give them equity in the individual LLC, which basically looked like we're going to give the chef somewhere between 10 and 20% of the individual LLC. For 36 months, they're going to be an at-will employee, so they get a restricted interest agreement.
Okay.
And at 36 months, they'll vest into that stock. And so that's the jumping off a cliff, that after 3 years, if we believe in you, if we get along with you, if we have the same ethos, then we're going to be partners. And that we've done that with basically 7 chefs.
Okay.
That include Michael Solomonoff and Christina Tosi and Lee Wolin and Stephanie Azard and Giuseppe Tintori that you mentioned, Gene Cotto, Chris Pandell. It's been really great because one, those guys get to build around their brand and a real future for themselves. If they like working with us, they don't go anywhere else. They stay with us. For instance, Lee Wolin's opened 6 restaurants with us. Stephanie's opened 8. So we have great continuity and they take ownership of their properties. And then Boka Restaurant Group is the parent company. And so Rob and I at the beginning owned 100% of the parent company. And then we had individual partners in each individual LLC.
Yeah, and it seems like that would work really well because, they've got skin in the game too. And, in the restaurant space, if you don't feel like you're personally have skin in the game, excellence doesn't seem like it gets reached. And so I've always thought that was a really interesting model that you came up with. How do you evaluate whether a chef has like the discipline and management ability to be a partner and not just a good cook?
It's a great question. There is a bit of roll of the dice, but there is some science the way we do it, which is the first conversation always is just a kind of lengthy conversation to say, do we think you're smart and do we like you? And do you like us? Do we seem like people that could hang out? And if we pass that test, then we just bring them in and we're like, hey, why don't you cook your greatest hits for us? If you were putting an album together that had 10 cuts on it, what are the 10 songs that you would put on it? And we say, order whatever food you want, usually to Swift and Sons, because it's got the biggest kitchen. And, we'll help them with prep, whatever they want to do. And they do a tasting menu for us of these 10 dishes. If that goes well, we spend more time with them. We go out to dinner. We have them meet other people in the company. We do a
Mhm.
long vetting process of who they worked with and for. And then we might come up with a concept and have them cook in a tighter box and say, hey, we're thinking French Vietnamese. You ever thought about that before? And they're like, oh, yeah, I have. And then we do another tasting. And if it's gotten to that point, it's only gotten to that point about a dozen or 14 times in our career. And we've started that process a couple hundred times.
Oh, okay. So we're talking, a 10% success rate, to get to that point. Has a chef partnership ever not worked in your world?
I define success in different ways. Like, I think everything is process in life. So I hate to call anything a failure, and you learn a lot from that. And sometimes we've done one restaurant with somebody that's been a partner and it's had its run, and then that was it. And that person wanted to go off on their own. But yeah, it hasn't worked a couple times. Anytime, I think if you're trying hard enough, things are not going to work every now and then. And it's hard to be partners. Look at every band in the history of rock and
Yeah.
roll.
Right.
For every Mick and Keith, there's 100 Gallagher brothers, there's it's rough. And, you know, eh, partnerships like Rob and I's are hard to come by. And I think the reason that we've been successful so long together, both as friends and partners, is that no one's ever drawn a line in the sand. But
Mm.
every once in a while, creatively, and I don't think this is a bad quality, that a chef might come and say, I don't give a fuck. I'm doing it this way. And that doesn't always work out.
Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. That's a
Sometimes
risk
it does, sometimes
reward.
it doesn't. I'm sitting in our brand new restaurant, Gingy,
Right.
and our new chef partner is Brian Lockwood. Brian was the chef de cuisine of 11 Madison Park when it was the number one restaurant in the world. He was the executive chef of Frasca and Boulder for Gary Danko. He's worked at 3 two-star Michelin restaurants. He's got an incredible resume. And, I came to him recently. It was like, I think this dessert needs a plate underneath it. And he goes, let me think about it for a second. And he walked over. He's like, I really don't want that to happen. And let me explain
Yeah.
why.
Yeah.
He's like, I really like the way it looks. And I was like, okay, that was not an argument that I was going to get in. I didn't think that passionately about it. It was an instinctual thought that I had, but to him, it was a big deal. And I was like, whatever, no big deal. And I told him, I was like, I'm sure I'm going to have a bullet later that I'm going to want to spend, and it ain't going to be this.
Right. And it's good. I think that meaningful tension between both is what helps create excellence, I think,
Oh,
because
yeah.
the reason he didn't want to play it under that, he actually thought that out. He had a good reason. It's not just, no, I just want it my way. It was, let me
Yeah.
explain to you why. And you're like, all right, you're the artist here.
I love dynamic tension, that perfect intersection of confidence and I'm a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And it's what exists inside of a good restaurant when you first open it up. There's dynamic tension all over this room right now, which is really beautiful. But we trained so long. There's a lot of confidence in the room, but everybody's a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
And I love that energy.
Yeah, I love that energy too. I think it goes into all throughout life. I mean, making sure you're listening to the experts. Like he's the expert in cooking. Not you. You certainly appreciate and understand good food, but he's the expert there. It makes me think of I was getting a bunch of tattoo work done, and I had this idea for what I wanted, and the artist was like, "Okay, I get that, get that, get that." He's like, "You shouldn't do this. Let me explain why." And he drew that out. I said, that's a great point. I should probably listen to you." And I'm so happy I did. It's always good to listen to the experts there.
I always think that the restaurateur chef relationship is a lot like the producer
And the musician,
musician relationship.
100%.
Think of all the people that Rick Rubin has produced.
Right.
And you put Rick Rubin and Paul McCartney in a room together. Rick Rubin isn't going to tell Paul how to write a song,
That's right.
but he might have a great idea that Paul can execute.
They riff on each other.
They riff on each other. Rubin is an ideator, and then Paul's got to make it real, or a musician's got to make it real.
That's right. He's actually got to lay it down. Then that's the thing that people are going to pick up. People aren't like, oh, I mean, well, there might be a small subset of people who might care about this, but people aren't going to be like, oh, I'm going to go buy that Rick Rubin record. They won't go
Correct.
buy the Paul McCartney record. But Paul McCartney would be quick to tell you that the producers that he's worked with are some of the most meaningful ways that he's made music.
100%. And if you really get into music and know producers, and you're like, if you're a crazy music fan, you might buy an album just because Brian Eno produced it.
That's what I meant. There's a small subset of people who actually really will care about that.
That's right. That's right. But that ideation happens all the time. We have a table in here that is a stand-up table near the pass, and we're still trying to define what it is in this restaurant. And
Mm.
it's sort of an on-deck circle. And it's a table's been waiting too long, or you want to VIP somebody, you send them there, and then Brian, kind of dealer's choice, put food out.
Ooh.
We used it for the first time last night. I go, Brian, you want to riff on this? He's like, let's go. I went up to a table at the bar and I go, folks, do you have any dietary restrictions? They're like, no, none at all. I was like, you want to do a little experimentation with me? They're like, game on.
Yeah.
And I was like, come here. And so Brian put some food out. We had fun with him at the table. And then we sat back afterwards and said, what did we learn with that experience? And so I love this, like, build the plane while we're flying it.
I love that. Unpeel, because here's what I want to get to between those last two questions that I asked. Right, we started in Lazy Days,
Yeah.
and then we're getting all the way to the founding of Boka, and like that whole group and that whole thing, which is a massively successful operation for you. That's about a decade of time between those, essentially. How did you go from 6-table Lazy Days at that point to getting to a place where you're doing Boka? What happened in that decade for you that brought you there, learnings and all?
Well, there's a natural need to do more if you're really passionate about something. And I had those 6 tables, and it was like heated by a kerosene heater and had boat plastic. And that was enough for me for like a year. And then I was like, I want more. Like, I would go to other restaurants and I want the leather chair and the nice piece of art on the wall and all that sort of stuff. And so when we got bought out of that restaurant, that second evolution was something much bigger. It was like we had this beautiful bar and we had 100 wines by the glass, and I had art on the walls, and I was like, that's great. And it was limiting. It was 1,200 square feet. I didn't have a hood exhaust system. And then restaurant number 3. So I was sprinting towards respectability and also feeding my own need to have a restaurant that wasn't stuck together with bubble gum and Scotch tape. And I would go to the big cities. I remember I went to like Soho Wine Bar and Kitchen. I had dinner at Gotham, and I was like, damn it. I would walk away upset because I'm so far away from this. And I was like, the captains who were waiting on me had a better suit on than I owned and knew more about wine than I did. And so, I still had this fraud feeling. By the time I got to 02, I had opened up 4 restaurants. I had failed once. I knew enough to be dangerous at the beginning of Boka, and I felt it. And because I had just failed, I was like the kid who had just gotten playing time in a basketball game, and I had screwed it up. And now I've been practicing really hard, and I'm like, coach, just give me another chance.
Yeah.
Just put me in the game. I'm not going to screw it up this time. And that was Boka. And Boka, I was there. I was having a baby. My ex-wife and I would sit behind the restaurant and have family meal together in her car. I was so afraid to leave that restaurant because I was so consumed with it being a success. And so that I had gone back to being a full-time student again when I got to Chicago. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me, was failure. And then at the back end of that, moving to a town like Chicago that had all these great restaurant professionals really made me raise my own game quickly.
Yeah. So in terms of raising your game, I get that. So you jump and you're then there, and then you start to have success, right? And Boka the restaurant has held a Michelin star for 15 consecutive years with Chef Wolin. And that is insane. That kind of sustained excellence in a single location over that duration is extremely rare. And I think what a lot of people would be interested to learn is, what does the infrastructure look like behind a restaurant that maintains Michelin level consistency for a decade and a half? What makes that different from other locations, and what's the secret there?
Well, first of all, I think you got to understand like the company structure as a whole, which is, you look at the individual restaurant, you have Lee Wolin as the chef partner. You also have a long-standing executive chef inside that restaurant, who's been with the team for a long, long time. We have a general manager who's worked with Lee for a long time. And then we have a director of operations who is over all of Lee Wolin's restaurants, who knows Lee intimately. And she basically is the liaison between the home office and Lee. So if Lee wants to add a 4-foot hood, to his existing hood,
Mm.
Wesley has already vetted that entire thing. And she can come to me and say, Kevin, Lee wants to add a 4-foot hood. It's going to cost $12,000. They can do it on Friday night at midnight. We'll have no downtime. And I get all the information. I can make a quick decision.
Yeah.
So we've set up this company with layers. And, it's like my financial department. I have 15 accountants that work in-house and a CFO over those 15 accountants. So anything of financials going on, we have aces in their places. And so it allows the people in the restaurant to concentrate on making the restaurant the best they possibly can and not getting bogged down in the weeds of stuff that guests don't see. And so I think that's how all the restaurants are their best. With Boka specifically, we have some rules in that restaurant that we don't do anywhere else. One of which is we look every single year, we're going to make a capital expense in that restaurant, sizable, to make that restaurant better. It could be a new service piece. It could be a new coffee maker. It could be a new decor piece. A couple of years ago, it was a brand new hood system.
Okay.
And we're always investing back in that restaurant because it's an old restaurant and you have to.
Right. Yeah. So it's physically old, and so it needs to be updated. Is it something also of kind of like the captain of the ship in terms of the restaurants, or the flagship, if you will, because it bears the name a little bit, or is it?
Oh, you're nailing it. There is some pressure to the fact that the name of the restaurant group is the name of the restaurant, and so Lee Wolin is so incredible to work with. He wants to win every single day. He never lets his guard down. He is the guy who calls more people in the company than any other chef partner.
Really?
I talk to him 7 to 10 times a week. So does Rob. So does the CFO. So does the COO. He's just constantly wanting to know information, or if something isn't working right, he's on it. He's a squeaky wheel, man. And God bless it.
I mean, everyone's built different, and it's great to have someone like that, and it's cool because you've provided ownership for him in that as well, right? I mean, he probably feels just as invested in it as you do, and you're one of the principals on the account. Speaking of that organization as a whole, I mean, and then we'll dive into you a little bit more personally, because I think people are going to want to know more about you. But a group as a whole, Boka serves over 2.5 million guests a year and generates more than $250 million in annual revenue, which is crazy. That is such a massive operation for 30 plus restaurants. And each of those is like conceptually different. It's not like, oh, I have, a bunch of the exact same restaurant that just cookie cutter put
We
it in.
do
We
it the hard way.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You are putting the work in to make it a legit, multiple different restaurants, multiple different major cities. Walk us through how you actually run that at the holding company level. Like, what does your week look like? Because here you are talking to me from a new restaurant opening, that you were at all night. Take us through the week in the life of Kevin Boehm.
Yeah, like every week is different. I'll say that right now. Like if you look at today, I woke up this morning and had a little recap about this restaurant, some stuff that happened last night. I actually just met with Charlie Trotter's son,
Okay.
who used to work in the space with us, and had a good meeting with him right before I jumped on with you. I go right from this to a real estate meeting of looking at a new restaurant.
Okay.
I will leave that meeting and come back here because it's our second night open and our first Friday night. I'll be here, have some meetings, which will roll right into me giving pre-shift. I will run home, which is 2 blocks from here, throw my suit on, and I will work service till probably 10 o'clock at night tonight.
Wow.
And somewhere in all that, I have to go pick up my son. But like right now, specifically, I mean, I just got off book tour. So I was gone for a few months. I went back and forth, but I did 70 book dates over 4 months. And then we opened Nashville, 3 restaurants right after this. So late May and basically the entire month of June, I'll be living in Nashville.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so when we kick off something out of town, like when we opened Laser Wolf in Brooklyn, I lived there for a month on property. And so every day is different. Thank God.
Yeah. Keeps it fresh and interesting.
Yeah.
So, but how do you and Rob divide responsibilities over 20 years? Like that's, how's that dynamic? Being partners for such a long time, is there, is this like a Lennon McCartney situation, or is it more like a, McCartney and Harrison type of situation? Like what's the dynamic between the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't want to compare us to the Beatles, but it's more
Sure,
Lennon
okay, fair.
McCartney, just in the fact that we bleed into each other, but we also do different things.
Right.
And so, you know, uh, I'm probably more micro financials, like a P&L in a store. Rob is very good at macro financials and real estate. Um, when we open up a restaurant, Rob does a lot of work with the GCs and construction. I'm probably more on deal with training and doing mock service and working with spiels and real time training inside the restaurants. But we also bleed into each other. So last night we were both working the floor at the
Oh,
restaurant.
that's great.
And so him and I don't really discuss it. At this point, we have a critical path that is the 850 things you have to do to open up a restaurant. And those first 30 things on that list, we sort of do together. Ideation, find the chef, real estate, put the financial package together, form the LLC, all that sort of stuff at the beginning is sort of us. And then we sit around with the team and kind of assign all these other parts to the other people.
Got it. You mentioned micro and macro, and at some point, right, you started at one restaurant and scaled up. Going from micro to macro for that, at what number of restaurants did the management complexity fundamentally change for you? Like, was it like, man, once we got to like restaurant number 4, we needed to rethink some things.
There's a moment. There is a moment. There was an inflection point, an exact inflection point. We opened 4 restaurants over the first 8 years of the company, the fourth one being Girl and the Goat. And after that, we opened 7 restaurants in 3 years. And during that process, Rob and I were starting to lose our minds because we had only added one person to the corporate office. We were still outsourcing financials. And Rob at Bolena, an Italian restaurant we used to have, goes, "Kevin, what's the spec on this cooler?" And I go, "I don't remember." And he goes, "Well, I fucking need it." And I was like, I can't remember if it's this restaurant or that restaurant. And we got into an argument. Rob and I never argued. And one of us put our hands on the other one's shoulders and said, "What are we doing to ourselves?" I mean, we knew we had to go backwards to go forwards. And so we had to stop for a second and add infrastructure to our corporate office, or we were going to lose our minds. We were old school in the fact that like Rob was still going to the bank and making all the deposits.
Mm.
I mean, we were doing stuff on such an analog level, and we needed Abby Chrysler, who came out with the company, and Ian Goldberg, who's our director of operations at the time. Their job for about a year was to figure out how to systemize all the things that we did. And we built a real corporate office that today is about 100 people, but at the time was 2.
And that was the key to unlocking the growth then, though, was to create the structure to basically be a central place to support all that at that point.
Yeah, there's so much whiteboarding that goes on because it's like, what are our guiding principles? What are the 800 things you have to do to open up a restaurant? What are our financial benchmarks? What are our standard operating procedures when a P&L comes out? It's all these things that you look at that you say, I'm no longer going to be in the lineup every day, to use a baseball analogy.
Yeah.
And I hit 345 and I'm going to have to replace myself with someone who doesn't know as much as I do. So instead of simply saying I have to mentor every single person, let's build a system that they have to live inside of that helps guide them to be a better player.
Is it you and Rob that kind of notice like, hey, we need to expand this piece here? Or do you have more people on your team that will come to you and say, hey, we see this issue? Has it gone to the place where you have managers managing managers
Oh,
and
yeah.
bubbling that up for you guys at this point?
Oh, yeah. There's so many things that happen within the company that might not be leading the charge on, or Rob is not leading the charge on. We have a business strategy section that might decide, without us, that the chasm between actual cost and theoretical cost at a certain restaurant is too much.
Mhm.
And we need to do an independent study of that restaurant to figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it financial wise, HR wise, um, beverage development wise, we have so many things and so much data all the time that someone in the company, whether it be a director or a vice president, should be able to see that and take action. At this point, if Rob and I are driving those things, we've created the company wrong.
And or something is very wrong that needs to be addressed, right? Like, it's like, if I need to be involved here, there's an issue.
And it's not to say that that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
but I do dissect it sometimes that I'm like, why was I the person that had to bring that up? And we figure it out together, not in a shaming the people way, but I was like, let's think about that for a second. That one got to me.
Mhm.
Is that okay? Is that something I just noticed because of my own DNA? Or is that something somebody should have caught along the way?
I'm learning to give grace when it's something that might have come naturally to you, but the other people are not you. And, they might not have, it's, if you're hitting 345 and someone calls up, gets called up and they're replacing and they usually hit 225, you got to take that into account to a certain extent.
I think at companies and in life, accept people as they are, but place them where they belong.
Right.
And so that doesn't mean that people don't have upside and can't change, but you have to identify who people are, and you can't place expectations that go above the level of what they can do at that particular point in time.
That's really good. That's great advice. I want to leave that part there. That was a great way to end that spot. I want to shift a little bit to some more personal stuff, maybe a little bit more fun things, because I had to ask a question around this. You appeared as yourself in season 3, episode 10 of The Bear, which, if you're familiar with the restaurant industry, it's a show that everyone eventually just watches, right? Like, it's a fantastic show, and that was a great episode. For the operators watching that show, like, this portrayal of restaurant life is kind of both like magnetic but also terrifying. Like, I know for me, like, I get the sweats when I watch it because I'm just like stressed out about so many different things. I'm assuming you probably felt the same way, and you were in the show. What was your reaction to how the show depicts the industry? And do you think the cultural moment around The Bear has changed how people outside the industry perceive what you do?
I was just having a conversation about this last night. Somebody asked me about the industry that I entered and what it's like now.
Yeah.
And I said to them, I go, I'm going to be completely honest. I go, when I started in this industry and I first opened up my first few restaurants, if I didn't get intense every once in a while or seem like I was taking everything personally, people were skeptical of my leadership skills.
Mhm.
And I think that we've evolved in that way, that like I would never go into a pre-shift, yelling,
Yeah.
in the 90s, there was sometimes was this expectation that I don't think Kevin's taking it seriously enough. I
Yeah.
think the world's evolved a lot. I wasn't ever a big yeller, but I was dramatic, you know? And like when I watched The Bear, I worked in restaurants like that. I've seen chefs that operate like that. When I watched it, I felt it in my stomach and my heart only
Yeah.
because I've felt it before. It felt very real. And so I, I think ultimately it's good for the industry. It brought back a mystique to it a little bit,
Mm.
even though, there is a way to work in this industry that is kind and hospitable and healthy, and you can still be intense and passionate and take it seriously. There is an intersection of all those things. Um, when you're serving 300 people in an intense restaurant, there is no time to go to a runner and say, "Hey, John, is there any way you could take this to position 3 at table 22, please?" There is efficiency of language, and it's some of the beauty of this, because You have to figure out the fastest way to make all these things happen. So a lot of this world is position 3, table 22.
Yeah.
And it's a slight hand in the back and a whisper in an ear, like, we don't do it that way. It's a 3-word drop. You were at that table
Yeah.
for 45 seconds. There's a lot of direct communication, especially when you first open up a restaurant. So when I see these things on TV, there's a giant difference between somebody who's doing it right and communicating directly and the things that people are currently talking about with Noma,
Uh-huh.
where it's gone too far.
Right. You're the second guest I've interviewed that's like brought up the Noma thing. Yeah, I get it.
It's like, it is very, very hard to do 4-star restaurants, to do Michelin level restaurants.
Mhm.
And if you're opening up a restaurant and you sort of advertised that your ultimate goal is to be on World's Best 50 or to get Michelin 3 stars, and you don't open with at least 2 Michelin stars, you're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
There is a certain level of pressure that if one person in the dining room drops a piece of silverware on the way to the Michelin table, you can lose the star. There is some maddening nature to all this.
Yeah.
So how do you be passionate and how do you maintain discipline and at the same time don't cross the line? That's where we live. That's what you got to figure out.
Has the bear and this kind of, awareness of the show and the general pop culture, or even among, chefs or servers working in the industry, has the bear affected your ability to recruit at all? Like, do people come into your business with different expectations now?
I think it's actually helped, to be honest.
Okay.
We are in a period right now where we have no trouble hiring. And, it's funny.
great.
I was just talking to Dylan Trotter, and he was like, I have people who come knock on the door at Charlie Trotter's and it's like, hey, what are you doing? Can I work here? There is a mystique out there right now. And I don't know how much the bear contributed to that, but anytime there's something where the layman thinks that they now understand the industry, it raises the level of consumer interest. And then if the mom and dads are interested in this mystique, then the son seems to think that that might be cool. And there's this whole interconnected nature to how something rises. And so if you go back to 2003 and Rocco DiSpirito doing the restaurant on TV, on NBC, that was this jumping off point to this proliferation of chefs in the universe becoming rock stars.
Right.
And there was this whole new level of
The Food Network exploding,
the Food Network exploding, all of that, which greatly helped Boka Restaurant Group as Stephanie Izard wins Top Chef season 4.
Yeah.
And then she wins the next Iron Chef. By the way, do not compete with Stephanie Izard in TV. You're probably going to get beat.
Yeah, she seems like a killer.
She's very good at it. She's very good at it. And so there's all these moments. So when I look at all the moments in my life of where, I think, like Ruth Reichel starting at the New York Times and, the heyday of Gourmet Magazine. And, Rocco DiSpiro's The Restaurant and, Bobby Flay and the Food Network and all that stuff taking off. And then after the economic crisis of 2008, people opening up chef-driven casual restaurants, which was probably fueled by like Momofuku. All these little moments have contributed to where we are now in the industry and where we're living. And the bear is one of those moments.
Yeah, and there will be another one. I was very curious to see if it's affected, your business one way or the other. And I love hearing that it's been a good
I think it makes it feel and look like there's an artisanal nature to what we do. And anytime somebody helps make this look like an art, I'm happy and I'm proud. And by the way, Brian Lockwood was brought into the Bear, the chef here, to teach Jeremy Allen White how to cook.
Yeah.
And a lot of the food that you see in the Bear is his food. We met because he was here in Chicago working on the Bear.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's how this restaurant kind of came about.
What? That's that's so great.
Can I show you something real quick while we're on film? Can I walk with you?
Yeah, let's do this.
Because this is really, 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 really cool. One of the things we did in this restaurant was we built a mural, which is the history of Chicago cooking on the wall. And so if you look at this mural, the fox painting on the canvas is like Grant Achatz painting the dessert on your table. And the balloon is Curtis Duffy because he worked at Alinea and then walked away. And so the glasses up here with the bird taking it away are Charlie Trotter's glasses. This is the duck consommé cart with Jean Blanchet from Le Francais. The four famous chefs from Spiaggia, Tony Matuano, Sarah Gruenberg, Joe Flam, and Missy Robbins. Little Kasama breakfast sandwich being eaten by a blackbird, Gordon Sinclair's piano.
Who put this together?
I wrote basically like a children's story. I had this idea from
Yeah.
from Bemelmans at the Carlisle inspired it. And I just said, what if I write a children's story where all the icons and characters of the story are figures from the Chicago restaurant history? And we gave it to this incredible artist in New York named Emily Parkinson. And she painted these murals based on the story. And so we put all these Easter eggs into the story.
That's amazing. I do want to touch on this because you do something that most restaurateurs don't do, in that you write like quite well. I mean, you've written for Esquire, McSweeney's, Fast Company, Chicago Sun-Times. You just wrote a full memoir that people can check out. Most restaurateurs don't write. What does writing do for you that running restaurants doesn't?
Oh, that's a great story. Well, I think the restaurants their storytelling in restaurants. I think that's where it's best. But writing was always kind of a meditation for me. I come from a bipolar family on both sides. There's several suicides in my family. And over the years, I developed tools for myself to let a little air out of the ball. And one of them was writing. And so I've written all my life since college. A lot of times I didn't write for anyone. I kind of wrote just for myself. I have hundreds of stories I've written throughout the years. And, a few years ago, I really wanted to, do it as more of a vocation. And so I got a couple magazine gigs, and that led to an agent seeing something I wrote and letting me write a book or put a proposal together to get a book deal. We got a book deal on Abrams, and my memoir came out in November.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had a feeling it was something a little bit to let the hair out of the ball, as you said.
Yes.
But I think that's something that's so cool because it's not often you find restaurateurs that are writing as much or writing actually their own stuff versus, say, a ghostwriter or something like that. So that's very, very cool. And the children's book looks great. When I was looking at that art, I kind of felt that kind of whimsical type of a feel. Man, I'm going to be in Chicago for NRA, and I have got to figure out how I can.
Oh, just reach out to me. We'd love to have people from NRA come and check out Gingy. We're in this beautiful dining room right now.
I mean, it's gorgeous. It looks so good. This is great. Kevin, I want to end with one final question, which I think is a good way, because a lot of people listen to this show to a certain extent. They're looking for that advice. They're looking for those tidbits that they can take with them. We have several people who've even contacted us. So they're early on in their career, and they love hearing from people who've been through it. And I would love to give opportunities for people to find those nuggets. You're 55 now. You've opened over 40 restaurants. One James Beard.
50. This is number 50.
This is number
actually.
50.
Yeah.
50. So 50 restaurants. You've won the James Beard. You co-founded a political coalition, launched a wellness club, written a memoir. I mean, just a Hemingway life for you. Boka is expanding into Denver and Nashville. What would you go back and tell the version of yourself who was opening Lazy Days at 23? What would you go back in time and tell that person that they needed to hear or that they needed to watch out for? Give advice to your 23-year-old self based on what you've learned.
The first thing I would tell myself is don't just whiteboard your businesses, whiteboard yourself.
Oh.
And I would go back in time and I would say, buddy, get medicated, get a therapist now. It's going to make your life a whole lot easier. And you're going to chase a whole lot of things in life, and you're going to keep thinking that there's a finish line, and there's not. It's all process, buddy. and try to enjoy it. I would say get a therapist, study Buddhism, and stop drinking. And so that would have really helped me out along the way. But the one thing I got right was, I think one of the beautiful things in life is finding something that you love and then trying to become the best at it. There's so much beauty in that. And then the fact that I've got to kind of play with some of the best has been so much fun. When I was a young restaurateur, all I wanted was to be able to sit around a table with the best and the smartest, be able to ideate and have my voice be heard. And, the fact that I get to do that all the time, and be taken seriously is just, I'm so grateful for it. And it's not lost on me. And that's the best part of my life, is like, I have 3 pillars in my life. Very simple. Do I wake up with purpose every single morning? And is my reason behind that purpose a noble one? 2, do I run into and can I affect the lives of the people I like, love, and respect while I'm doing that purpose? And 3, if I'm watching the movie of my life with all those people that I like, love, and respect, am I okay with showing them unedited footage? If those 3 things are intact, then I'm intact.
That's awesome. Kevin, what a treat. What wisdom. I just want to leave it right there for folks to simmer on that. That was really, really, really good. Thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing your experience and wisdom. I'm appreciative. I've learned a ton, and I know that everyone listening has as well.
Thank you for having me. This is really fun. Really, what a great conversation. Thanks for all the great questions.
Restaurant Reset is sponsored by Genius for Restaurants, the modern point-of-sale system from Global Payments. Genius helps you reach your most important goals, whether that's simplifying your operations, speeding up your checkouts and table turns, easily expanding into new locations, or building loyalty with guests. To find out more, visit globalpayments.com/genius.